regions are social constructs that serve political agendas. Fundamentally, they are mental maps that revolve around power, shape identity, agenda settings, and sense of belonging as a stakeholder in a shared space. Regional identities form the basis for which a state perceives itself with others. A logical consensus of the dynamic nature of political agendas is that regional constructs are also dynamic and subject to reflect the given state of international relations. The contemporary Indo-Pacific construct is a relatively recent phenomenon. Previously, the term Far East was widely used. The term has mostly fallen out of popular use due to its certain connotations with Eurocentrism, colonialism, and cultural exoticism. The term was also initially used by Imperial Japan, but it later opted for East Asia in an attempt to create an alternative region order in the form of the Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere. Fast forward to the late 20th century, the Asia-Pacific emerged as a new regional construct with the world's largest ocean, the Pacific, at its heart. What was previously seen as a geographical barrier is instead seen through the lens of connectivity, where shipping lanes and flying roads would bring to emerging economies of Asia closer to developed markets of the US. This occurred in the context of the unipolar moment, where the United States emerged from the Cold War as the world's sole superpower. It is within this unipolar framework that the US was able to act as the security guarantor the regional order through hubs and spokes, a series of bilateral security ties between the US and its partners in Asia. Institutions played a key role in upholding the regional order. The Asian-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, perhaps best encapsulates the idea of an Asian-Pacific construct. Formed in 1989, APEC promotes free trade and economic cooperation between the Pacific Rim economies. Also economic in nature, the institution has diplomatic implication. It promotes dialogue between member states. It has a normative effect on regional stability and integration. Hence, the narrative mattered as well. A 1993 World Bank report titled "The East Asian Miracle" brought forth the idea of the four Asian tigers, referring to the exceptionally high growth rates of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Evidently, the Asia-Pacific narrative is one of the prosperity and economic integration, as well as optimism for state integration to develop into cordial political relationships. In short, the Asia-Pacific regions pays tribute to the growing connectivity in trade between Pacific Rim countries as a result of shrinking geographic distance due to globalization and geopolitical change. Multilateral institutions like APEC and ASEAN are key features in the Asia-Pacific construct, contributing to narratives of prosperity and amiable cooperation. The Asia financial crisis in 1997 represented the first major challenge to Asia-Pacific, especially the centrality of the US within it. Other developments in the world, like the September 11 attack and the subsequent quagmire in the Middle East, further affected the US position in the Asia-Pacific. An increasingly powerful China wanted to play a greater role in regional order building. Chinese participation in regional multilateral institutions grew. For instance, the ASEAN Plus 3 arrangement demonstrated the growing wave of China, but more importantly excluded the US. It was within this context, the disillusionment with hegemonic order and the Asian financial crisis, that set the stage for the Indo-Pacific construct to emerge in the 2010s. The Indo-Pacificization of Asia is manifested in two ways. First, the recognition that India may no longer be excluded from the Asian strategic system. Second, the emergence of contending visions for regional order building. The India factor is the most intuitive, representing the Indo in Indo-Pacific, but its meaning is twofold: a more proactive India, as well as merger of the Indian and Pacific Oceans into one strategic system. India is a rising power which, apart from growing internally, also has a proactive region policy culture. India's Act East policy, the successor to the Look East policy, is an effort by New Delhi to cultivate extensive economic and strategic ties with nations in the Indo-Pacific. For instance, the India-Japan strategic partnership saw both nations engage in regular naval exercises, political exchanges, and military-to-military contact. Furthermore, India also expanded diplomatic, economic, and security ties with South China Sea countries like Vietnam and demonstrated a general willingness to strengthen its ties with ASEAN. With that, India increased its presence in the South China Sea when its navy conducted bilateral exercises with various ASEAN member states, signaling to the world its stake in the region. The implication of which is that India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific is partially driven by its concerns regarding China's newfound status. Given the current state of US-China relations, it would seem logical that the US would welcome the inclusion of India to contain China manifested in the minilateral arrangements such as the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. Indeed, the inclusion of India does not translate into the enlargement of the US containment camp. For one, India lies outside of the US alliance structure, and its not alignment tradition means that India has maintained extensive ties with different countries and has avoided picking sides in the region. India's proactive Act East policy is also reflective of the confluence of the India and Pacific Oceans. The global trade that passed through the Malacca Straits also passes through the vast Indian Ocean. From the Chinese and Japanese perspectives, their overwhelming dependence on the sea lines of communication for energy imports means that their economic security rests on the Indian Ocean as well, alongside their trade and naval access. China's interest in the Indian Ocean is demonstrated by its string of perils strategy, a term that was never used in official Chinese lexicon but is widely believed in American and Indian circles. The enlargement of the People's Liberation Army Navy means that its presence in the Indian Ocean will continue to become more frequent, including counter-piracy missions in the Gulf of Aden and port visits to surrounding countries. More recently, China has been accused of using infrastructure investments to acquire port facilities in countries surrounding India. With the Pakistani Gwadar port and the Sri Lankan Hambantota port being the more controversial and high-profile examples. The second way the Indo-Pacificization of Asia is manifested is seen in the emergence of contending visions for regional order building. The Indo-Pacific construct forms the basis for the continued relevance of the US in the regional order. The Cold War and the unipolar moment that entrenched the Asian security architecture still exist today. However, the challenges that emerged in US-China strategic competition means that US would have to offer more to legitimize its interests in the Indo-Pacific, that come in the form of the Free and Open Indo-Pacific (FOIP), which is a strategy derived from Japan's 2016 FOIP concept. At its core, FOIP is a status quo-oriented strategy that promotes the rule of law, economic prosperity, connectivity in sea lines, and peace and stability. However, many regional actors have published their own interpretation of FOIP with small though important nuances that reveal the different ways the Indo-Pacific is conceptualized. For example, Japan's FOIP strategy has a greater emphasis on connectivity in the form of quality infrastructure investments such as economic corridors that would connect the Indian and Pacific Oceans through mainland Southeast Asia. Japan's FOIP also placed significant attentions of the growth potential of East Africa, again through nation-building assistance and infrastructure investments. Investments and development have strategic undertones as well, as China invests in the same region for geopolitical influence. In contrast, the US FOIP has a greater emphasis on its security alliances and partnerships, with a greater strategic weight given to its traditional allies like Japan and Australia, as well as fostering closer relationships with India and ASEAN. Furthermore, the 2022 US report explicitly calls out China for its coercive behavior and accuses it of possessing hegemonic ambitions. Metcalf argues that the US Indo-Pacific strategy set the stage for a more fully fledged strategic competition with China. However, this is also contestation of vision for regional order building, which is evident when considering China's recent debris. China has refrained from using the term Indo-Pacific, as they believe it is employed by US to contain its rise. This might create the impression that China does not have an Indo-Pacific strategy, yet it does exist. Debris is China's Indo-Pacific strategy. The Global Infrastructure Development Strategy enshrined in China Constitution become the centerpiece of China foreign policy. Although economic in nature, the project does have geopolitical implications. This suggests that debris is a means for Chinese power projection, both materially and normatively. The Indo-Pacific, as we know it today, inherited many attributes from the preceding Asia-Pacific. It remains a fact that the region is one of economic growth and cooperation, however, with greater strategic elements infused into it. Perhaps the biggest and most significant difference between two regional constructs is the latter's inclusions of India and the Indian Ocean. The country has demonstrated a willingness and capacity to engage in the region, both economically and strategically, and both bilaterally and multilaterally. The Indo-Pacific is not only India looking eastward, but also China looking westward, as it realizes that its fate and fortunes extends beyond the Malacca Straits and into the Indian Ocean, the result of which is the emergence of regional ordering visions like FOIP and BRIC to make sense of this super region. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to the channel.